Hi, sixth grade. This is Miss Camp, and I wanted to make a couple videos for you today to review what we were talking about in class this week. And I was thinking about this habit that we were talking about this week from the 8 habits. Habit number 2 is begin with the end in mind. And we were each thinking about, or one of the questions I asked my homeroom class was at the end of sixth grade, what do you want to say that you have accomplished? Is there something in sixth grade that you want to have as a goal? And I thought about that habit in terms of writing. And I thought how some people might say, by the end of sixth grade, I want to be able to write a story or a chapter book or a 5-paragraph essay or a paragraph. Or some people might just want to be able to write confidently and creatively a very high quality, fancy sentence. But no matter what your goal is, whether it's the story or the essay or the paragraph or the sentence, they all begin with a sentence. They all begin with being able to write a very high quality, grammatically correct, good sentence. In order to do that, we need to really understand what makes a sentence. What is a sentence? What are the parts of a sentence? And so we started by asking the question, how many parts does a sentence need to have? And there are 2. And what are those? We also talked about how each part of a sentence answers a question. Because we are people, sentences are written and then someone reads them. And when someone is reading a sentence, they have lots of questions. They want to know lots of things. Who, what, when, where, why, how. And so the writer needs to think about those questions when they are writing. In a sentence, there are only 2 questions that have to be answered. One of them is, who or what is this sentence about? And the other one is, what are they doing? Or what are they just sitting there being? But we need to say something about somebody or something. So we often say, somebody is doing something, period. That's the end of a sentence. So I'm going to bring up my iPad screen and we are going to look at this again. So I also said that our brain learns really well when we use color. Color can help us organize things. I call that color coding. And so I'm going to use a lot of color when I am analyzing a sentence. So that word that I just said, analyze, that's something I can do. It's a verb. Analyze is when we take something big and we break it down into little pieces to see how it all goes together, how it all works together. The noun form of this word would be analysis. And we are going to do sentence analysis today. We're going to take a sentence and break it down into the parts because a sentence is made up of words. And each word in the sentence is there for a reason. It has a special job to do. And those jobs are called parts of speech. Each part of speech has a special job to do in the sentence. You might have heard of some of these. We're going to talk today about the noun. We're going to talk about a verb. We're going to talk about adjective. More about adjectives in the next lesson. We're going to talk about prepositions. That will be also in the next lesson. And conjunctions are in the next lesson. And what color should I use for adverbs? And adverbs. These are all parts of speech. Okay, so for doing our sentence analysis, I start with red. Okay, so the first part of the sentence is called, see if you remember, starts with an S. I'll start writing it and you see if you can remember what it is. It's the subject. So the subject has an important job in the sentence, maybe the most important job. It is the part of the sentence that comes first, and it tells us what the whole sentence is about. So it answers the question, what is the sentence about? Or who is the sentence about? Now, if there is a word that answers the question, what or who, that word is a noun. You may remember that a noun is a person, place, thing, or idea. So I am a noun because I am a person. So Miss Camp is a noun. Place. Eagle Ridge Elementary School, that's a place. So Eagle Ridge Elementary is a noun. Thing. Oh, I'm drinking some bubbly water. This is a thing. This is a noun. And then I said idea. An idea can also be a noun. Well, what is an idea? Well, let me tell you one example. Happiness. Happiness is the feeling of being happy, the idea of being happy. That is not something we can touch with our hands or hold in our hands. We can't see happiness. We could see evidence of happiness, but we can't hold it or touch it or measure it or see how big it is. That is an idea. It's really in our head. Another idea would be the idea of an activity. For example, if I said to you, running is fun, this is a really tricky sentence to figure out what the subject is, because when you look at running, it has an ing on the end, and we like to think of ing words as actions: swimming, running, talking, jumping, driving, sleeping. These are things we can do. So we say, oh, ing, that must be a verb, an action, something we can do. But in this sentence, is anybody running? No, no one is running. We're just saying that the idea of running, we're thinking about running, the idea of it, the activity of it, the action of it is fun. So if I ask the question, what is this sentence about? What is fun? What's the first word in that question? It's what. And remember I said the answer to a what or who question is a noun. So what is fun? What is this sentence about? Running is fun. The idea of it, the action of it, the activity of it. We're not actually doing it right now. We're just talking about it or thinking about it. This is the subject of the sentence. So an ing verb can actually be used as a noun if we're just talking about the idea of it. And here it's the answer to the question, what is this sentence about? It's the subject of the sentence. And a subject has to be a noun. Or, do you remember what else it can be? We're going to talk a little bit more about this later. It can also be a pronoun. Do you notice that there's that little word noun inside the word pronoun? A pronoun is a word that can take the place of a noun, like he, she, it, you, we, they, I. But in that subject box, right here, we need to answer the question, what or who is the sentence about? It's going to come first, and if there is action happening in the sentence, this is going to be the one doing the action. All right. Let's look at running one more time. So here running is the subject of the sentence. What if I said, I like running? Okay. Well, who is the subject of this sentence? There's my question. Who? Who is the subject of this sentence? It's I. This sentence is about me. The whole rest of the sentence, we're going to talk about in a minute what that is. We said there was 2 parts to a sentence. The first part is the subject, and the next part is, dun, 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 dun. Let's take a look. Do you remember what color I used for this? Green. Now, this is a very hard word to remember. This is not the kind of word that you're going to go home and talk about at the dinner table with your family and say, you know, I saw a really nice predicate at school today, right? We don't say that. We don't really use this word unless we're talking about sentence analysis. Well, a predicate also has to answer an important question. Just like the subject has to answer the question, what or who is the sentence about? The predicate is going to answer the question, doing what? Doing what? So if our sentence is, Pablo is eating, that's our sentence. Pablo is eating. We know the sentence is about Pablo. Well, our next question is, Pablo is doing what? He's eating. So I just said that if you see the question what, if a sentence or a question begins with what, then the answer is going to be a noun, a person, place, thing, or idea. And so you say, Miss Camp, look, there's the question, what? Wouldn't the answer be a noun? No, because this is not what by itself. This is part of these 2 words that go together, doing what. And the important part of this question is right here, do. What are you doing? Doing, if you are doing something, you are doing an action. So the answer to doing what would be an action word. Do you remember what we call an action word? Starts with V. I love saying words that begin with V because they make your lip tickle. Verb. So a verb is an action word. It answers the question, doing what? So we have Pablo is eating. What is he doing? Eating. Pablo is running. What is he doing? Running. Pablo is sleeping. What is he doing? Sleeping. But what if we have a sentence like, running is fun? What is this sentence about? Running. But there's no action happening here. Nobody's running. We're just making a statement. We're just saying something. But actually, nobody's doing anything. How can this be a sentence? Well, there's one other question that a predicate can answer. If it does not have an action verb in it, then it has what we call a being verb. And it answers the question, being what? I think I'm going to erase our pronoun here because it's getting in the way of talking about our predicate. I'm erasing part of the word being, which is kind of an important word. All right, get rid of that. Okay, so let's look if I can fix my word being. All right, now in this question, being what? This part here is what's important. Being is just sitting there doing nothing. You're just sitting there being something. If I say the desk is brown, the desk is not doing anything. It's not jumping up and down, talking, saying, hi, look at me. It's just sitting there being brown. So it's being. Well, I cannot say the desk brown. That is not a sentence. So because every sentence has to have a verb in it. This is the most important word of the predicate. It usually comes very first thing in the predicate. And so we need a verb that can say nothing's happening, nothing's happening, nobody is doing anything here. It's just being something. We are describing it, or we are making a statement about it. We are saying something about it. So we need what we call a being verb, and we have one. We call this the verb to be. This is the verb to be, or the being verb. And you might have heard this before. I usually memorize it like this. Am, is, are, was, were, will be. Will be goes together. It's two words, but they go together. Am only goes with one word, I. You can only use am if you put I in front of it. I know it looks like there's no space between those words, so pretend that there's a little space here. Okay, I am. Is goes with just one person. It can only be one person or thing there, like Pablo is hungry. If there's two people, then if there's two or more people, then you're going to use are. Pablo and his friend are hungry. And then was and were and will be, we will talk about at another time. Those are not happening right now, or they're not true all the time. Was and were means it's all finished. It's not true anymore. It's already happened. And will be means it hasn't happened yet. Maybe Pablo will be hungry later if he does not eat his breakfast now. Okay, so our predicate is going to answer one of these two questions. It's either going to answer the question, the subject is doing what, or the subject is being what. With this one, you're going to look for the verb to be. So let's look at our Pablo is hungry sentence. Pablo is hungry. Okay, so I say, who is this sentence about? That's my question. Who? And the answer is Pablo. It comes first. It's before the verb. It tells us who the whole sentence is about. So this is our subject. Now, it's true that we want to say that Pablo is hungry. Okay, that's what we're trying to say here. But if I cover this up, I cannot have a sentence that says Pablo hungry, because hungry is not a verb. Hungry is an adjective. An adjective is a describing word. An adjective describes a noun. Okay, this is a noun, describes a noun. It answers a question, what kind, or how many, or which one. So we want to know, what kind of person is Pablo right now? He's a hungry person. Hungry is describing how he's feeling. But we cannot just say Pablo hungry, because remember, what's that first word we need in the predicate? We need a verb. Okay, so Pablo is not doing anything. He's not eating. He's just sitting there being hungry. So we need our being verb. So that's why we use the verb is. Also because Pablo is just one person and he's hungry right now. So our predicate is everything else in the sentence besides the subject. So it's this whole, well, I was going to use a box, wasn't I? It's this whole thing, including hungry. It's the verb and everything else. There's only two parts of the sentence. Okay, this part, oops, sorry about that. Where's my pointer? Pablo is the subject and is hungry is the predicate. Subject, predicate. The red box is the subject, that's part one. The green box is the predicate, that's part two. The predicate can answer a lot of questions besides what Pablo is doing or being. It can also answer questions like, when is he hungry? Where is he hungry? But those questions we're going to talk about in the next lesson. So today we're only going to talk about what has to be in a sentence. And there has to be a subject and a predicate. And in the predicate, there has to be a verb. Even if there's no action, even if nobody's doing anything, there still has to be a verb. All right, I'm back. This being verb right here is called a linking verb because it's going to link together Pablo and hungry. So there's links in a necklace, there's links in a chain, there's links in a chain link fence. So let's say we have our first link is our subject. Okay, that's going to be Pablo. And our next link is the adjective describing Pablo. That's going to be hungry. But we can't have a sentence that is just Pablo hungry. So we take our verb is, our being verb, and we link those two words together. So we call it a linking verb. You can think of it like an equal sign in math, right? We think of 2 plus 2 equals 4, right? This whole side is equal to or the same as this whole side. You can think of is as a word that means equals to. In this kind of sentence where there is no action and something is just being something, we're making a statement, there are two things that we can put here in the end of the predicate. So we could have an adjective. Okay, we just gave that example. And I'm using yellow for my adjective. So we could say Pablo is hungry, Pablo is tired, Pablo is smart, Pablo is fast, Pablo is funny, Pablo is annoying, Pablo is sleepy. Those are adjectives describing the subject. An adjective describes a noun. Okay, so the other thing we could put there, and I'm going to use orange, is a noun. So we could have, there's my red, here's my orange. I'm going to link them together with is. Here's Pablo. And I'm probably going to need to put a in front. We can put a. If you ever see the word a or the or an in front of a word, then that should be a ding, 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 a clue the noun is coming, because you can put a, an, or the in front of most nouns. Okay, so here's my period. This could be Pablo is a student. Pablo is a brother. Pablo is a doctor. Pablo is a friend. Pablo is a pilot. Pablo is a grandpa. Those are all people, and so they are nouns. We're just making a statement. These two things are the same person. We're saying they are equal, okay? Pablo equals whatever noun we put here. So in this type of sentence where there's no action happening and we're just saying that our subject is just sitting there being something, we could use an adjective to describe what Pablo is like, or we could use a noun to say Pablo is an example of this. Okay, he is also a doctor or a friend or a classmate or a uncle. All right, so that is about the linking verb. Remember, our linking verbs, or the verbs to be, there are other linking verbs, but the main one is the verb to be. Am, is, are, was, were, will be. Okay, so here's our two parts of our sentence. Let's review this real quick. The first part is the subject. It answers the question, what or who is the whole sentence about? And it's going to be a noun, or it could be a pronoun. More on that later. The second part of the sentence is the predicate. It has to have a verb in it. It does not need to have anything else unless it's the kind of verb that doesn't make sense unless you put a noun after it. Okay, wait a minute. I thought a noun went in the subject. How can we have a noun over here? Well, let's talk about that. Let's go back and look at a new sentence. Let's say Pablo baked his mom a cake. Pablo baked his mom a cake for her birthday. Isn't that nice? Okay, so here's our sentence. Well, let's start by asking, who is this sentence about? Okay, there's our question, who. Who is the whole sentence about? We're looking for the subject. That's Pablo. So he, all by himself, is the subject of the sentence, which means the whole rest of the sentence has to be the predicate. Okay, so there's our predicate. And the first word in the predicate is usually the verb. So that's baked. Now, there are actually more nouns in this sentence. Can you find them? Remember, a person, place, thing, or idea. Well, his mom, that's a person. So mom is a noun. And you see this A here, that's a clue. There's a noun coming. And cake. Cake is a thing. And so that's a noun. So we have 3 nouns. How do we know which one is the subject? Well, there's some clues that can help us. One clue is that it's usually first in the sentence. I'm not going to use orange. Okay, so first word usually comes before the verb. So we can ask ourselves, is Pablo the one doing the baking? Right? And the answer is yes, because would it make sense to say that the cake baked Pablo or the cake baked his mom? No, that doesn't make sense. Or is his mom baking the cake for Pablo? No, that's not what the sentence says. So we know that it's Pablo doing the baking. That's why we put Pablo first. So in English, we put our subject before the verb, and that tells us that this person or this thing is the one doing this action. It's the one that the sentence is about. So this is the subject. What do you think we call these other nouns in the sentence that are not the subject? Don't worry, we have a name for it. And it's almost like subject. That's what makes it so tricky. So the subject is that, right? Okay, all the other nouns in the sentence are going to be object. Look at how many of those letters are similar. We got a B-J-E-C-T and a B-J-E-C-T. They're almost the same. So all the other nouns in the sentence are an object. When we look back at I like running, let's cover up some of this stuff here for a minute. Okay, let's look at I like running. What's the subject of that sentence? Who is it about? Well, we said it's about me, right? I. And the whole rest of the sentence has to be what? The predicate. Now, the first word in the predicate is usually the verb. And that's true. This sentence is about what I like. Okay, so like is my action. I'm talking about what I like. But this is tricky because you might look and say, oh, wait a minute, ing. That must be a verb, right? It's not in the red box, so it must be the verb. And if I said to you, what's the verb in this sentence? You might say, running. That's something you can do. But ask yourself first, am I running? Does this sentence say that I am running? Am I doing any running in this sentence? No. This sentence is me just saying, in my mind, I'm thinking about running, the idea of running, the action or activity of running. I'm just thinking about it. It's a thought. It's in my head. It's an idea. It's a noun. I'm answering the question, what do I like? And remember, a question that begins with what is going to be answered with a noun. So this over here is a noun. It's the idea, okay? It's an idea, a thought in my head. I'm not actually running, just thinking about it. So in this sentence, there's no action going on. I'm just saying, yep, I like running. What do I like? The answer to that question, what, is running, the activity of running. So that's a noun, but it's not the subject of the sentence. I'm not saying that running likes me. I'm saying that it's all about me, likes running. So if it's not the subject, remember what we call it? Object. So in this sentence, running is an object. In order to make running a verb, I would have to have something like, I am running. And if your ing verb is being a verb and you're actually doing it, okay, it's something that you are doing, your action, then, and it's ing, then here we are also going to use the verb to be. You will see am, is, are, was, were, or will be. But in this kind of sentence, where you can see an ing verb, I am running, running is the action I'm doing right now, we don't call this a linking verb. We call this part right here, the verb to be, in this kind of sentence, is called a helping verb because it's helping out the verb running. Because we don't think it sounds very good to just say, I running, I swimming, I thinking, I reading. And so we use the verb to be right here to help it out. And then it sounds better. So we say, I am running, he is running, they are running, she was running, but then she fell down. They were running, and then they stopped for lunch. We will be running after it stops raining. So if the running is the action we're actually doing, then it is part of the verb. And in this sentence, it's a two-word verb. The main action is running, and the verb to be is helping it out. So let's go back to Pablo baked his mom a cake. So we have these other two nouns, his mom and cake. Since they are not the ones doing the baking, and they're not first in the sentence, these are object nouns. The reason it's so important to know if a noun is in the subject of the sentence or an object in the sentence is because we might want to replace that noun with a pronoun. Do you remember when we used that word? Well, let's take a look at what I mean by that. So pronouns can be in three different lists. Okay, we can have a list of what we call subject pronouns. We can have a list of what we call object pronouns. And we can have a list of what we call possessive pronouns. But we're not going to talk about possessive pronouns today. So subject pronouns would be I, you, he, she, it, we, and they. These are pronouns that can be in the subject of the sentence. They can come first. I could say, I am hungry. You are hungry. He, she, it is hungry. We are hungry. They are hungry. So it can come first in the sentence. It can be the subject of the sentence. The object pronouns are me, you, him, her, it, us, and them. So let's see here. I turns into me. Okay, I cannot say me is hungry. I say, who is that sentence about? It's about me. So can I say me? Me is hungry? No, because me is not on the subject list. Instead, it's I. I say, I am hungry. You stays the same. That's easy. But he turns into him. She turns into her. It stays the same. That's easy. Let's pick a different color here. We, do you see what we turns into? That turns into us. And you see what they turns into? That turns into them. So let's think about this. Let's go back to our sentence of Pablo baked his mom a cake. So let's say I want to replace his mom with a pronoun. So that's a girl. So I look at my girl pronouns and I have she and I have her. Those are my choices. So when I come to my sentence, let me cover up his mom. We're going to change this. Okay, so if I say Pablo baked she cake, does that make sense? How does that sound? Pablo baked she a cake. That doesn't sound very good. Let's see why not. Let's find that word she. Here it is. It's in the list for subject. It can only be in the subject of the sentence. That's why we need to know. Is the mom in this sentence part of the subject or is it an object? Well, this sentence is not about Pablo's mom. She's not the one baking the cake. Pablo is the subject. She is an object. So we need to go look at the object list. And we can use her. So let's see if that seems better. Okay, let's try writing her. Pablo baked her a cake. Yes, that sounds better. Okay. What if we want to replace Pablo with a pronoun? Okay, so let's get rid of Pablo. All right. So we know Pablo is a boy, so we can go down and look at our pronouns. All right, the ones that are masculine, that means for a boy or a man, we can see are he and him. Okay, so if we were to say for our sentence, him baked her a cake, does that sound right? No, it does not. That does not sound okay. So why not? Because Pablo is the subject of the sentence. It's who the whole sentence is about. So we need to go look at our subject list. He. We need to use he. So here in our sentence, we're going to put he baked her a cake. Okay, let's ask some questions. Who is this sentence about? It's about he. How do we know who he is? Well, if you're writing, you cannot use he in the sentence unless you have already told your reader a clue about who he is. So for example, let's write a shorter sentence. Let's say he is fast. Okay. What do we know about this sentence? What are our two parts? Who is the sentence about? It's about he. That's our subject. The whole rest of the sentence is our predicate. What's our verb? It's is. What is fast? Fast is an adjective describing he. Okay, so this in this sentence is a linking verb. It's like an equal sign. But who is he? You cannot write this sentence unless you have already told us, your reader, a clue about who he is. So you would have to have a sentence before it that says something like, Pablo likes to run. Period. Okay. Now, if I say Pablo likes to run, he is fast. Do we know who he is? Yes, we do, because we already said in the sentence right before it that we're talking about Pablo. So he is talking about Pablo, is referring to Pablo. So it's important in your writing when you use pronouns to make sure that we could look at the sentence before or earlier in the paragraph to make sure we know who you are talking about. All right, so this is everything we've talked about in this lesson. I'm going to take a quick look to make sure I've covered everything. Okay, I think that is, oh, wait a minute. Yep, I think I've covered everything for our first lesson. And then in our next lesson, we're going to go back to our subject and predicate, and we are going to talk about other questions that can be answered in the predicate, especially the questions when and where. So that will be next time. All right, thanks for listening. See you soon. Bye.